We're not getting 60% dropped frames today, so that's good. Pretty minor changes on the build so far, despite me having like 10 of these videos recently that I haven't even like time-stamped or sorted. But in any case, just going to be continuing off on that today. Maybe it'd be wise to condense them all down into one video rather than 4, but whatever. As far as new things that I've done since the last stream, I question why the images aren't showing up here. Peculiar. Anyway, yeah, I basically updated a couple of pages on the spreadsheet. So the CKs have been completely redone, although I still want to color code them based off of source. But this basically includes all sources of CKs, whereas beforehand it was just a spreadsheet of the specific containers. So in theory, this will help make more informed decisions about which CKs to get from which containers. But at the same time too, it's like a lot of these quote-unquote additional sources are sources that don't exist, that you can't access anymore, like the Artisans pack and the Tinkerers pack. Or, I mean, even with these other containers, like I have a few of some of them, obviously more of some than others, but like the quantity of these aren't exactly very high historically, these being one of each in the most recent mini battle passes works. But on the other hand, like most of them are already purchasable for crowns. A lot of the ones that were priorly exclusive have made their way into the containers or into the store for purchase directly otherwise already. So a lot of them are still just going to be also RMT walled off by vehicle packs. So generally anything that comes from a vehicle pack is going to be exclusive to that vehicle pack, other than in the case of the CK digger for the Bigfoot. But I'm going to go through this some more, add some of my own fun color coding. Somebody was asking about getting this as a version to use themselves, and like, I'm not opposed to anybody using my work, but they were also looking at it for Google Sheets, and I poked around with migrating stuff to Google Sheets before, and it's a lot less flexible with what I can do for formulas on my end and formatting, even though I can certainly understand that it has much more appeal and a lower barrier to entry for other people to use them, because you can just access Google Sheets from anywhere online without an account. But for the sake of this being connected to all my other workbooks and still a living document that's work in progress, and again the limitations of the tools, they're just sort of staying here for now. So I said I can send them the CSV for this if they want, because that would at least carry over for the Google Sheets version. It just wouldn't have any of the, you know, potential further updates or anything, or the formatting. But then I also poked around. I mean, I did the I was kind of talking about it in the couple of prior videos too. I was playing around with changing like the structural part calculator a little bit more again, but this is a ever infinite being worked on thing, just due to how many theoretical parameters you could search by. In any case, I shifted over the bumper and passive melee weapon info from where I had it as part of the analysis of the changes over here. Maybe I'll do more of it at some point, I don't know. Apparently, this got angry, which kind of makes sense, because it's probably looking for it in a place that it doesn't exist anymore. Because technically, there are now 2 armor slabs, because I just divided them into their own types because it was kind of silly to treat it as one. Added the frames there for the durability calculations because turns out the frames have a disgusting amount of durability per part, which isn't shocking when you have 75% pass-through and 240 base. But I did some with that. I still need to do more stuff with the parts master, the min-max, the mitigation. At least the tools, these things are not going to change much. Speed charts, once they change Phobos from being a flat +5 to a +5%, these calculations will change, but the formatting probably won't. And this is also something I need to update because I didn't actually figure out about this, whether the reload time was before or after, considering the reload speed bonuses. So it might take the time and then make a new time and then apply reload speed, or it might incorporate those. So I'll need to do some checking of that. And I'm going to need to do it specifically by probably using the damage globe, because it's another in-game tool with a theoretically consistent and accurate method of measuring something. In this case, it'd be time. So I can build another calculator with the reload speed applied after, and then probably find some value where there's a significant difference between the two calculation results, and then check it. So for instance, if something says it's a 5-second reload one way and a 6-second reload if you calculate it the other way, then in theory I know that I can shoot the globe thrice, once to start the damage timer, once halfway through, once at the end. Whereas if it calculates it as a 6-second one, then I'd only be able to shoot it twice before the ding goes off and it stops taking damage. So, I mean, theoretically with, incorporating input delay, the firing period, human reaction speed, probably be looking at something that's like 4.9 versus 5.2. But even then that'd be fine because that's a fairly big break point, obviously. So I'll have to poke around with that some more. And then I have I think I ended up just hiding all of them. Yeah, I still haven't updated the co-drivers. The used builds is still something I need to work on. This isn't going to be a super long, in-depth video of me reworking a lot of these, I don't think, but possibly. And then there's the co-driver things, and then like the actual builds for each of the co-drivers. But until such a time as we get the energy rework, which is theoretically next week, I don't really need to worry about it because that's going to change so many things anyway. And most of these on-paper builds aren't really relevant or necessary for me anymore. A lot of them were just sort of organizing my thoughts on how I'd make a build. And now that I've been playing the game for 4-ish years, sort of the thing where I've just internalized a lot of the information and like know the part stats. So I don't necessarily need to use a calculator to tell me the energy cost of things. But again, that might change with the energy changes depending on how it goes initially, and then of course any further changes they make afterwards, because they didn't seem to indicate that they're fully reneging on per item energy / balance changes. They're just starting it with minimal amounts, so Yeti no Memori primarily, and then we'll tweak the other ones as they go forward rather than not tweaking them. So we'll see how that goes. Then additionally, on the topic of actually not needing to rely on this for math, so for instance, when I was talking about like the mass calculations specifically, for instance, like I can do the calculations for how much tonnage and mass, and theoretically you'd also add the like upgrades parts to have this be true to the game, but it's like at that point you can just use the game, like it'll tell you the values. The one caveat is specifically for cabins and movement parts, because where your mass limit and engines and movement parts and upgrades all kind of coalesce can lead to some pretty severe breakpoints on things, as I think has been shown with me specifically with the cohort mass limit with big rams versus the other movement parts. So this is again something that theoretically could be made into a public calculator, but no guarantee this is going to stay the same for any period of time. It's also not entirely intuitive, which is mostly the fault of me trying to make it as like space saving as possible so it fits on one screen. But the gist is it basically pulls the stats, which are from other parts of the document. So once again, stuff is linked and I can't necessarily decouple them. But we're talking about the Scotty for damaged. 2600 doesn't feel like a lot for 8 energy of legendary weapons, but of course everything is terrible when you compare it to pre-nerf Draco, when they were the only legendary that could hit 9999, which is crazy. Anyway, but with this, it can pull the values of any cabin you select, and then it does a combination matrix of sorts for all the different upgrades you could have. So you can have a tonnage upgrade on the cabin, you can have a mass upgrade on the cabin. You can't have both, those are mutually exclusive, which also limits the possible combinations quite a bit. Likewise, you can have Yuki, which increases tonnage, or Grizzly, which increases mass. And then this is a chart of the tonnage to max, or the tonnage needed to match or exceed your mass limit, including all of the engines and then all the potential upgrades further on. So for instance, I have a cohort fused for mass limit, and it also has the Grizzly co-driver, so it has both mass limit upgrades. Then depending on which engine I use, that'll determine what the mass limit is, how much tonnage I'm lacking. So if I don't have any engine, about 18,000. If I use the Pegasus, which I currently am, it's about 22,000. And if you had a mass limit fusion on the Pegasus, which I don't, would be prohibitively expensive, and I'm not suggesting anybody do that, but I know some people already have, probably when it was cheaper as an engine, then you could get up to like the actual 22,000 mass limit that way. Or rather, again, the discrepancy between your tonnage and your mass. Then dependent on that value, and depending on whether or not your movement part is upgraded for tonnage or not. Luckily, there's no mass limit or other upgrades possible with the movement part specifically, so this part is at least a lot more straightforward, even though it might be looking a little daunting. It's basically just a copy of this above chart. So that is the equivalent of the fin whale with a Yuki and tonnage upgrade cohort, without a tonnage upgrade on the big wheel or on the big rams, and then with an upgrade on it. So it's essentially sort of 3D, where this is a layer on top of this, depending on which movement part you have, and then whether or not you have the upgrades or not. So for instance, with my build, I'm looking at needing about 12 big rams, because I'm running the Pegasus with Grizzly and a mass limit upgrade. But theoretically, if I hop off of the Grizzly co-driver, which to be fair, it's a fusion build, it's U-shaped, it's at the back, theoretically I shouldn't be activating the perk by taking damage directly to cabin very often, then I can get away with running 11 big rams, which I mean, amazing, save a whole one part. But in any case, that is an option. Likewise, if I had the Garrida, I would need... That did not seem to like that. There we go. You could need... Thank you. You could need up to 16. The alternative being, of course, if you fuse for tonnage in either place, then that obviously reduces the number. But yeah, so that's the big spreadsheeting stuff I was doing. Like I said, this is... I mean, obviously this permutations, combinations thing is... There's enough variables to it. I could just do it in my head or as napkin math, but for the sake of me asking the question of if I want to run X movement part on Y cabin with Z upgrades, how many would I need? And which upgrades would I need? So that's the purpose of this and why I made it, and why it's not something that is going to be a hidden sheet, because this is probably going to stay relevant even more so when they add additional parameters and upgrades, which I'm sure they will. And then using this, theoretically I can go back and upgrade my armor min-max calculations, because they were based off of pulling a list. Let's see, may have been the second one, maybe not. Okay, well, at one point I had it, no, not Outlook, thank you. At one point I had it pull a list dynamically to tell you which armor parts you want based on, oh, there we go, that's kind of, that's for wheels specifically. Whatever, I guess I just went for manual for the sake of some of the answers being dumb, but it was basically taking the structural list based off of which parameter you're looking at, which in the case of the, what I was doing was the vehicle durability, and then it was based off of mass, and then looking at high mass parts. So while I wanted higher dura per mass, I didn't actually care about power score, and I had a lot of mass to play around with for the damage mitigation and armor min-max. So when I was looking at getting, you know, the 8,000 dura, then we're looking at parts that have a significant amount of mass, but also have a good ratio. So I'd be looking at things with high values here, again, dependent off of the cabin calculation. We can look at the mass available when you consider all the components, and then the movement parts, and then with that remaining mass, being able to determine which structural parts. So it's basically interlinking a lot of different parts of the sheet, and it's not quite done in any of those ways, but they're all, you know, steps to it. So for instance, with this, I don't even know if I ended up, yeah, so it looks like the suggestion here was to have the mass per part be, see, I don't know. Oh, so this is just left over, and then this is the recommendation. So I have 2 parts left over, and I have 101 mass left over, so I'd want something with a mass per part of approximately 50. So again, obviously this calculation isn't up to date, because in this case the part count is 79, but just as an example of why knowing your available mass and having the calculations of vehicle durability per mass, and then as a result the mass per part for which armor you wanted to put on, would all sort of play into each other. But it's also not like anybody needs to go nearly this deep on it. And then I was also looking at condensing the speed chart quite a bit, trying to also have the 3D visual look, although it's kind of hard without a third axis like grid coordinate labels, and it gets really messy when you do that. So I don't know what the solution for that is either, but at least you can get a really nice, pretty shade going on. And then of course again, these are going to change with Phobos then being plus 5% rather than plus 5, which looks like I put the flat values here anyway, which seems to indicate that I fucked up somehow, because this should be 65. It should be equivalent to the next one. So I don't know where what these values are. It's also possible I just copy pasted the value chart incorrectly. Yeah, so this is, I don't know why it would be 63. Oh, you know what? Sorry, this is totally without Phobos. Because this is as a result of the cabin upgrade. You can have it be 60 or 63. And then if you had Phobos, it just bumps it up to the next category. So it would be 60 or 65, and then depending on the cabin upgrade, 63 or 68. But now, because Phobos is going to be percentile, you don't just shift 2 columns to the right. It's going to be, 60 times 1.05. So, well, I guess that's the same, which makes sense. But the 63 wouldn't become 68 with Phobos. It becomes 66. So I'm going to have to end up adding significantly more columns to this, which is already a mess. So that's fun. That's cool. That's nice. But, yeah. As far as the actual... Oh, and as a side note, if anybody knows what the fuck the Oriental Treasure Pack was... costing... that'd be nice to know, as of course I selected the wrong one with the redirect. Let's see. Oriental Treasure Pack. There we go, this one. So it was discontinued a while before I started playing, but in any case, if I'm going to have a exhaustive list of CK sources, then it makes sense to include that. And technically it's not exhaustive because it doesn't include the fact that you could purchase these ones for coins, but it was kind of dumb having a full extra column for like, is this purchasable by coins? And it only applies to these 6 and hasn't been available for literal years. If I also had the decor list, which also included some, which could also used to be available for coins, but are now only crown only again, maybe, but it's not, so I don't. But I can't find anywhere the original cost of Oriental Treasure, which reminds me, that's actually why I had Discord open on the Crossout channel, because on top of the contest, which I still need to participate in, it's this one. That's an interesting stance to have. I can dig it. I mean, good luck, but you know, whatever. Let's see. Ask players. Oriental Treasure. Yeah, I'm not shocked. We'll ask people. Oopsie. Also possible that it's actually lying and has something to do with the streamer mode, but whatever. Which also is still very much showing everybody's full names. Thanks, Discord. Very cool. Whatever. So, as far as Crossout itself, yes, I'm very much here. Thank you for your concern. The builds. I did make this, which I'm not exactly super impressed with, but I mean, it's in the garage slot, so I might as well show it off if raids are decent. But basically, so now mind, I've not done raids like daily consistently for over a year, because I already have 5,000 of those motherfuckers under my belt over the past 4 years. So I don't worry about them a whole lot, but when I did do them, which is generally for the sake of doing dailies alongside somebody else, which makes it a lot more bearable, highly recommend, the method was generally to wait and look for a Frontier Defense or a Steel Cradle, because the former gives the most rewards, and the latter is theoretically the quickest, even though really the former and the latter end up generally being the same amount of time. And also because of the 5,000 raids, a significant portion were us just doing whatever, and you get really sick of the escort missions real quick, despite their whole 3 variants. So the most annoying one of those that came up, which for the sake of clarifying, I suppose I could show. So if we look at Frontier Defense and the different maps, this one, this one, this one, these 3 are really just strong in general. And then I don't think I've done a Frontier Defense on this before. I think they might be lying about this being an option. Huh, interesting. Well, in any case, at least the 2 of these are fairly straightforward, work pretty well regardless of the weaponry you choose. Then for Rock City and Crater, due to the very long angles and the like protection of terrain, these tend to be better for running the Cyclones and the Retchers, at least personally with the builds I have. And Fortress tends to suck with everything because you are theoretically trying to shoot down on enemies, which is a plus for things like Retchers, but the terrain is also very much in the way. So my thoughts were something that actually rolled on the ground instead of being launched into the air with drop would probably do pretty good. So Porcupines work pretty much, great on every map. Again, on maps like Rock City and Crater, just long-range weapons seem more effective. But for Fortress especially, seems like they'd be pretty good there since they're, going to be rolling down hills, and then it doesn't matter if you have direct line of sight or not. But Porcupines are kind of expensive, and Fortunes are very much not expensive, especially with them getting nerfed. So, yeah, this is my attempt at basically making a build for that. The thing. I love how it keeps changing these channels every time I do that. Not you. We don't need to hear the woes and wants of the community at the moment. But the original idea was to make a V shape because the fortunes were originally directionally locked. Now they are not. They can spin fully in place if they have the space to do so. But also, that's kind of difficult to do. So this is the current iteration where they don't exactly have full reign to rotate anyway, just because of how close they are to each other and all the armor I put around it. But it is at least the current iteration of what I try to do with it. So we should probably change off of Billy too. That seems significantly less useful. So we can give this a go on... Wow, the raids changed and they're not very good for this now. Maybe we'll just get back to that later. But it's, yeah, pretty straightforward. I have fortunes underneath. I use the Odin because that lets me get a Doppler and a reload booster on it because of how wide these things are while tucked underneath and my utilization of heavy armor. Not exactly a whole lot of room to put anything else up there. So that's probably a fat fail from the PvP side of things. But in any case, it also means that I have the modules tucked down, so the Doppler, and then because, again, the game hates anything that's not in the power of 2, using a discharger rather than the flywheel, because the flywheel is not going to fit in a 5x3x4 space very nicely as a 4x4x2, and then that's pretty much the entire build. It's just that. Pretty straightforward. I guess it's worth mentioning that the Odin is connected to the fortunes and vice versa via elbows, and then there's also an engine there, but that's not, I don't know, it doesn't work super great. So I'd probably want to rebuild it again entirely. I also completely remade the Leviathan because, as I had mentioned before, they changed how vehicle history works in the assembly log. So got rid of the one that I had. So I made another one, which, instead of using a shit ton of reloading weapons, uses a shit ton of overheating weapons with multiple sources of protection, with the Aegis, with the Kami preventing heating, because fire and Akari seem incredibly prominent, and also, again, fairly straightforward. Shit ton of armor, and yet it has had 0 matches so far, because apparently 30,000 power score is either too crowded or too low of a power score for whoever is doing Leviathan battles to fight against it. So yeah, I don't expect that my second ever attempt at making a Leviathan is going to be like an absolute squad killer or anything, but at the same time, it's hard to tell either way when it gets literally 0 matches. You doing right there, Xbox app? I seem to be struggling again. Seems to have a bad habit of doing that every now and then. Yeah, and it gives me an error as soon as I end it again. Great, cool. Well, again, at least I'm getting not 67% frame drop like it was yesterday when I was playing Helldivers with Andrew. So, yes, you're doing great for the whole 2 minutes you'll probably last before bugging out again. So, yeah, there you go. If you're looking for something to do, and you have a build that can fight 30,000 Leviathans, which according to the community is equivalent to 25% of the group's power score for the first one, and then 50%, and then 100%. So, you know, if you and your 3 other buddies feel like coordinating power scores around any of that, although I'd be really impressed if there was a squad of people that had a 120,000 power score. Yeah, because I don't even think I can test this in custom battles or anything. Plus, I need to find people who'd be interested in testing in custom battles even so. So, yeah, it's, I mean, like, I've fused, a couple fused Arbiters. I have a couple fused Cyclones, and they benefit from overheating, so I just threw them all on the same build, and I was like, you know what else likes not shooting? The Auroras. So, sans me suddenly coming across multiple flashes, since the sparks don't give the DPS debuff, but I had 4 energy, so I threw the spark on one on. But sans me coming across multiple flashes, I don't really know how else I'd upgrade this current idea of a build, at least, because throwing on a 3rd Cyclone would double the energy cost, so it'd be 10 just for that one, whereas I can have 3 Aurora, and then the 4th one only costs an additional 4. And there's not really a whole lot of other heating elements that specifically care about overheating. So you have the Mastodon, the Incinerator, the Trombone, the Porks, but they're all reload based. So as far as overheating, like, fairly limited options, and there isn't a specifically overheating increases damage heat source. So it's like, I just figured this would probably be best, because I can't add more Arbiters either without the increased cost. I can't add my 3rd Cyclone without the increased cost, and I don't really know what else I do for weapons. Like, if you look, like, all of these are reload based. I'm not using drones, but they're either reload based or based on the cheetah, like, so heating doesn't apply to them again. Reload based, overheat based, but are cryogenic, which are antagonistic with what I'm doing, which is looking to heat, and also reload based other than this, which still requires ammo boxes, and is kind of pricey, although the effect of decreasing enemy damage is sort of in line with what I'm trying to do with the build. It is an attractive option. Again, I need to get a full set of Scotties just for that, which seems a little excessive, and then I'd need ammo boxes, whereas currently the only explosive module I have on the build is the Daze, and that's only if it's active, which, I mean, it's not always going to be. So I'd like to keep the non-explosive aspect of it, you know, there, considering people really like throwing fire at Leviathans. And then we have overheat but require ammo, and also limited directionality unless, you know, I go with a fucking relic again. Then not related to reloading other than these two, and then that is reloading. So reloading, lots of reloading. Theoretically, I could run the Gravistar, but they would prefer shorter cycles in theory, and then obviously have more limited range compared to the others. Then these are requiring ammo, reloading. I already have the maximum amount of these, of the auto cannons I can have. And again, none of the other ones really care about maintaining damage or maintaining overheat. And then shotguns, which, as I've already said multiple times, is sort of antithetical to the build. And then machine guns, which, oh look, again, I have all the selections I can have. I believe miniguns are technically in a different one, and fixed angle and rapid fire might also be in a different one, but again, limited turning, limited range. These two, neither of these two really care about overheating. The Vindicator kind of does, but just for the sake of defending, which again, limited angles, limited range. and then the Reapers require ammo boxes. So I feel, like there's not a whole lot to go from here. So if this idea, regardless of me playing around with some more power score options or not, leads to battles finally, eventually, maybe, then I can actually see how good it is, and then if it's not good, then I don't know, probably do an entire rebuild of something different, because like I said, I don't really know how I'd improve on this idea. But who knows, at the very least, I mean, my prior Leviathan wasn't exactly super successful at getting hatches, and certainly not winning either, so it's possible that it would just be in the garage for the lulz, and or if I ever want to take it into, well, not Bedlam, because you can't do that anymore, and apparently it was a bug, but maybe custom battles. Or, Clan Wars down the line, because that's what this is for. My 30,000 build is a bad boy in Clan Wars Leviathan mode, which I've never taken part in. So, yeah, that was the biggest time sink recently that wasn't on stream, and that's the reason why it wasn't on stream, is because I figured it was going to take a while, and it did. And then, I whipped this up in like 10 minutes. The other update I made was I added another leg to the Cyber Crab, because it's like, well, if I'm giving up and saying it's going to have 3 eyes when I eventually get around to replacing the stickers anyway, then why not have an additional leg as well? That also took it perfectly to the tonnage limit. I'm actually kind of quite chuffed about that, because this is already fused for mass limit. I'm not going to put a mass limit fusion on the hot red, because it's only 100 mass. But in theory, if I did, it'd be even closer. And fusing the Gyarados for tonnage is only going to give me another 100 and some tonnage, because I have, 8 of them, and they're only 1,400 tonnage each. So, yeah, seems straightforward enough. So then, as a result of me putting another leg on in the middle back, that meant I had to spread these out a little bit more, which is kind of sad, because they worked a lot better when they were, but there's no space, and I don't really have space to put legs anywhere else. So, be how it do. And then, with the extra mass, I jostled these around, added a little bit more armor. It's just, like, this isn't really functional, it's just a continuation of the armor that was surrounding the engine anyway. And then I put a couple more blocks of armor here on the back, since beforehand it was essentially hollow and entirely dependent on the legs not getting shot off. And, they have DPT, so even if they don't get shot off, they're going to pass damage through. So, fairly minor overall. Like I said, I still got to sticker it. And then I put this down there, because I don't really know where else I'd put it, since I had it on the back priorly. So, yeah. Then I have so many other things to do. Oh, that reminds me, there's somebody who made a dreadnought, because my dreadnought isn't actually a dreadnought, it's not a boat, but apparently I didn't save it yet. Lol, poor plotting on my part. That's fine, I still have it on my phone, so we can save there, because the mobile app is dumb and breaks and won't let me see all of the pictures, so I didn't know if they posted a parts list or if it was just more photos. Damn, there are just more photos. So I'd either have to ask them or reverse engineer a parts list, because while it's on exhibition, it's on the PC exhibition. And, yeah, I want to poke around with that. I ended up reading up on the lore of gun turrets and their labeling quite a bit, funny enough, as just me trying to be informed about it, because they were talking about ABXY placement here. And there we go. That. Then I kind of deep dive on that. It's not like it's impossible for me to figure out what it is. Like, it's very obviously a Hugin, and therefore an Odin in order to have 16 energy for the 4 worlds. And like I have every single structural part in game, so it wouldn't be hard for me to put it together, but I was kind of hoping that I could have the work saved for me by just copying it via the parts list. So yeah, might have to play around with that some more at some point. But also have that ever limiting factor of slots. So what else? Well, if the raids aren't changed, do I want to supper? Yeah, why not? Whatever. Part of the stream anyway. So, yeah, the nice thing about this with the 17th energy point is that I can get the Doppler on it, which is pretty important, again, specifically on maps like Fortress, where it's really good and saves a lot of time, especially when you're using indirect fire weaponry, to know where they are before you establish direct LOS. And the app dies again. Lol. Oh, there we go, I just had a shit target somewhere. At least for the time being. Oh, look at that, we got a pork version of me too, how exciting. Although to be fair too, I have next to 0 experience with the fortunes, and these are unupgraded. That's not a good spot. And they just got their fire rate nerfed pretty heavily. Half dead. Which, yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. I died in a medium raid with it when I was testing it early on a Frontier Defense Zone Crater. And again, could definitely chalk up at least some of it to skill issue, but even then. I suppose too, to be fair, I literally have enough room and parts limit to not use explicitly heavy armor pieces. So even though that's my default, I probably could have stood to use more Foundry stuff. Would complement the big RAM, at least. Big RAM's the... It's hardly like I'm worried about power score with this thing. You get over 10,000, then any extra amounts don't matter. Or rather, being low-er in the 10 to 20 bracket doesn't seem to matter for matchmaking a lot of the time. Also not entirely sure if I like the placement of the fortunes at the very front underneath, because in theory I could nest them deeper back, and in PvP that'd be smarter, but at the same time this does let me actually aim pretty high up with them as a result of the angle of those corner platforms, which I wouldn't be able to do if I tucked it in further, but apparently the dog's really excited about somebody outside. I wonder if that dude's name is supposed to be Kenobi and they fucked up, or if it's supposed to be a pun. Accident or purposeful? Always a great question when potential misspellings are in play. Kind of reminded me, there's a dude who, I don't know where I saw him. Might have been Siege. And their name was Philophile. And I asked why, and they said because their name is Phil. And I was like, oh, well, actually, like, in theory, if it was self-love, it would be autophile. But I mean, it's a pun, it works. Pointed out that the alternative is spending more money on a name change, which they don't want to do, but if I were to provide one, they'd be more than happy to. It's interesting, because then, of course, if you did go with autophile, the assumption would be that people think you're talking about automotives, which I shortened the wrong way, because it's literally self-moving as a translation, as in the motive part. So in theory, it would be motophile or something. But we use the wrong shortening when we call them auto. And likewise, we use the wrong shortening of helicopter into heli or helo when it's not helicopter, it's helicopter, which is rotating wings and something like that. So in theory it would be, helico, but that doesn't work. Although it does also explain, like, I mean, I'm not going to say that everything is nice and neat, but I suspect that's part of the reason why the American and UK pronunciations for them are fairly different, because if you break the word into helicopter, then the British pronunciation is a bit closer to that, whereas the US is just helicopter, very much like pronouncing the P, the phonetic spelling, as it were. There you go. Couple fun facts for you based off of what the internet tells me. Now I tell you. Now you can go tell, probably the internet, I guess. Kind of hard to do anything just explicitly by ear nowadays, but you could do that too if it sparks joy. I'm not going to hold you back. It's not illegal. I'm not going to break into your room in the middle of the night, beat you up for sharing those things in a non-digital format. Which I suppose is more suspicious to say that I've just left it implied. But yeah, I might win some patches for this, but I'm definitely not going to win any awards for the performance of this build. And like, since they have full rotation now, it's like, I feel like they might be better on top of a build, but at the same time, obviously, they're going to be a lot less potentially protected there. Like, in theory, if I just had, like, nothing down on the bottom other than the elbows, then they'd probably have pretty decent rotation, but the big rams would get in the way, and the armor would get in the way. I suppose the other option is doing a hover, but then also dogs and other CQC guys who just run up to you are going to strip them off real quick. So I know, like, for instance, Lexi really likes just having them hanging out off the side top of their build and then just cross mapping with them, but I don't know what the quote-unquote ideal solution with it is. Nor perhaps does anyone with the recent changes, although of course the V-shape is fairly popular as per usual. Let's see, oh boy, we can do another of the same, huh? And then of course I do the aforementioned Frontier Defense before starting this stream, and then I'd done a Steel Cradle. Well, this is before reset, so this is when I was still like needing to walk the dog and stuff. But then I did this, and I'm like, you know what? Probably would have been a good time to stream. But then we had all this preamble, and the rates changed. So and I don't think it would do any better in a convoy mission. Maybe just wait for it to change again. Show off my pro Crossout day skills in the meantime, despite it being a build updating stream. But like, I don't know that I can really update any of these without doing, or well, any more of these without doing an overhaul. Like with Crater Defense, I was thinking I don't really need the Hadron. Like a 15% speed up in reloading time is pretty decent, but is there like a better option for it? And I was thinking maybe using the Hippogriff, because that way I could save an energy on the Doppler and instead put it into a engine. But if I'm using the Odin, I already have an extra energy point, so what would I spend that other energy point on with that? And then the Hippogriff, even when fused for mass, is significantly less than the Hadron for max mass limit, so I'd have to redesign the build quite a bit. So, I don't know. And of course this event continues the very frustrating recent habit of, hey, there's new items, but to get them, you have to open this container and get them randomly, and we're only going to give you a few of these containers. Mathematically not even enough to get one of each of the rewards. And those new rewards are also not tradable, but the ones that are tradable are ones that you could have gotten before from other sources. So your options are get a reward you already could have you know had and or would have been able to buy from the market if you didn't get it, or you get a exclusive new reward that you at least currently can't get anywhere else, but the chances of doing that with all of the new rewards is fairly low considering the pool is fairly diluted. And for instance with the other one, and that's assuming that they have equal drop chances for different areas, which is, you know, pretty fucking unlikely. But if that were the case, then even then you have, you know, only 7 containers, 14 containers. So, you know, good luck actually getting those. But at least this time, like, this is a 14-day event, so we can have 14 of the boxes. And there's 24 or whatever rewards. So the chances of getting it from here are a little bit better, whereas last time I think it was 14 items in the boxes for the leopard duck and the clown duck, maybe closer to 10, but then you only got 7 containers. So, like, I got 0 of the ducks, I got 0 of the new paints, I got 0 of the new, actually that's why I think I got 2 of the new stickers. But still pretty fucking awful considering how I had to do, you know, 3 weeks of daily events, which, like mine, that's not the end of the world to do. It took me like 10 minutes a day, but doing that and not getting anything new out of it, and potentially not having any further chance to get any of those kind of sucks. Is it better? Is it worse than, you know, the, like, getting them from explicitly, like, events or paying real money for them? Like, arguably, yes, I'd say, because, like, at least, you know, like, with paints like the black gold, like, for one, that already had multiple other acquisition methods, but at the very least, if you're unlucky with it, you know, just fucking buy it, even though it's going to cost you 3,000. Whereas I don't have a clown duck, I literally cannot get a clown duck, or joke duck, or the 2 Valhalla paint, or any of that stuff, until such a time as they decide to re-release it, and I'm playing and fulfill whatever criteria they're going to, you know, put as a prerequisite for getting it. So, that kind of sucks. Especially also considering how, for instance, with the ducks, you don't just necessarily need the duck itself. For instance, you might want to have multiple of them in order to make the other ducks, the ninja duck and the spring duck, which, again, you know, your chances of getting even one of them is pretty poor. Don't like your chances of getting multiple. But yeah, brawls are cool, random rewards are cool-ish. New rewards are cool, but, like, yeah, please either make them tradable or give us more than enough chances to get it, or don't make it random. Or, you know, just don't include filler trash rewards that we have gotten before and are only worth like 5 coins. Yeah, just a thought. Some thoughts, multiple thinkings. Short form is not my forte. Like, I can be concise and specific when situation needs for it. Rock that shit all the time in FPS games, but if we're giving feedback, I think it helps to be nuanced. That's rude. Yeah, no, I agree, Mammoth Man. Enough out of that guy. Enough out of shooting me. Oh, you have the same build. Well, I'm dead. Oh, unless, of course, you're dead. Oh, that works. There we go. Pro Crossout Day plays. Play as good as that, and you two might maybe get second place and get 60 scrap. Which honestly, for a 5-minute match, not bad at all. Sorry, I lied. It's 45 scrap in second place. I guess it's 16 first, but still, not bad, honestly. We've gotten much worse amounts of much lower tier rewards before. Well, higher tier, but you get so much less of them, it's effectively lower. So, not quite convinced that it's going to go better than last time, but you know, we'll give it a go. For the sake of the stream, for the viewers, the audience at home. On the topic of vehicular warfare, too, been doing some Battlefield 2042, and straight up, it's probably the worst Battlefield I've played, which is from 3 to 2042. I've done all those. But it's still decent enough-ish, I guess. Like, the class-based system, pretty cool, I guess. I mean, it's not unique to it. Basically, everything that was unique to Battlefield, they stripped out, which is a terrible misstep on their part. Like, I played Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the newer one, and it felt like it had more of the systems that Battlefield used to, like with the fairly extensive weapon customization, and Battlefield went from that to, oh, we only have 4 slots on our weapons. But also you can change out your gear a little bit more, like with Call of Duty. And also we have specialists now. It's like, it feels like they're about a decade behind the curve, especially for a game that was supposed to feel more futuristic. But in any case, vehicle warfare, and it's always great because I don't suck with them, and enemies generally have a very hard time getting their engineers, which are normally like a third to a half of the team anyway, to kill them. But also kind of annoying, like all of the unlocks are behind super steep barriers now, like getting like 300 kills or assists with a specific thing, which, like, yeah, if you're extensively using it, you'll eventually get it anyway, but the actual like ramp to getting there is pretty low, especially with the prominence of those vehicles, and how, again, if I'm not the driver and or playing with a competent person with comms, chances are good then we die before we even get 10 kills. Never mind the 20, 30 some you'd normally expect or need for any decent degree of progression. And I don't really have anybody to play with on it currently. The people who do have it are infrequently on and don't really particularly care for vehicles. But kind of done with the infantry side of things in it, because again, it doesn't feel super great or Battlefield-y, but like vehicle warfare is still a pretty unique selling point of the series in the game specifically. And they're definitely powerful enough to deal with shit too, which is nice. You lose some of the magic, I think, when everybody's a vehicle like in this game. Also, it doesn't really feel like you're handling vehicles a lot of time with this either. Certainly don't have the ability to one-shot motherfuckers. Yeah, you keep shooting there, buddy. You're doing great. And, thank you. Apparently they're bringing you along with me. Also, of course, having an exposed cabin for the bots is quite possibly the worst option. Generally speaking, you want to take a bunch of cabin damage and then have them shoot off like every single one of your armor pieces and then go back to your cabin at the very end to get the most durability out of your build. But, I mean, it's just, my cabin's fully exposed. So on the plus side, I'm a lot less hurt by explosions that shoot directly at my face. But on the negative side, these guys aren't using explosives, so it's not much of a factor in my favor. Also, doesn't look like we're killing those simultaneously, so we're gonna have to deal with the multiple waves. It is satisfying just bouncing these motherfuckers all the way across the map, even if they're not particularly good, as, you know, none of the reloading weapons are in raids. Especially ones that get nerfed. Fancy that. But hey, there's a new episode of Hell of a Boss out, so that's pretty neat. Despite all the everything surrounding that. And Murder Drones gets another episode in a mere 2 months. And Hell of a Boss gets another episode next month, possibly, depending on other further delays. Kind of crazy to me that they, like, as far as I understand, most productions are in post-pro, like at least in games, like are in post-pro for like a good like 6 months. So like I get that they're indie and, you know, doing their own animation thing, and well, I'm sure they, you know, went out and hired like professionals in the industry. I don't know to what degree they did that for the producers as well, but the fact that they're like, yeah, we're still finishing some things up the week of its release is crazy to me, because they're like, yeah, it'll come out in May, and then people are thinking, oh, mid-May, May 23rd, the full moon, for the episode titled The Full Moon, and then it's like, we released it on the 31st because we wanted to get it out and keep to our listed schedule, and it's like, you did quite possibly literally the worst job of that, but I'm surprised they don't really leave themselves any wiggle room for stuff, you know, like, shit happens. And if you're doing stuff in last week, especially if you're planning to still be doing stuff in last week, you don't really leave yourself any wiggle room. Like, none at all. 0 tolerance. So, yeah, the build, at least, not so great. Fun-ish, but I feel like I really ought to find a more effective setup for it, and again, it took me all of, 10, 15, 20 minutes, something like that, less than half an hour, certainly, to build it, so I'm not going to be too chuffed about being like, oh man, I'm going to have to start from scratch if I don't save it, and I don't have a save slot to save it. And it's like, but I also have like 10 other builds on the backlog for new build updates, so hardly a high prio. Just thought it would be interesting to poke around with it, since like I said I did one before, but it was the V-shaped one before the fortunes could rotate fully. Now that the fortunes can rotate fully, I didn't really take advantage of that in this build either, though, to be fair. I think if you could side mount them, it'd still be pretty good in a V-shape. But alas, you cannot side mount them. Which doesn't really make any sense to me, but whatever. Because, for instance, if I can do this before load in, like if you do end up firing them sideways anyway, they still just roll on the ground fine. Probably a poor example, but still showing that they still do their job. It's not like they're tilted and like spinning in a circle or anything. Probably a special fancy term for it I'm not familiar with, but whatever. Well, it doesn't bode well for that dude to already be dead and respawning. Normally I expect that okay, dude. Normally I expect that to die sometime during this defense. That dude is a retro brick too. The fuck do they have issues with? He's supposed to be nigh immortal, dude. Especially don't know what it would have been that we should have been able to have helped you better. Well, probably just people using the retros like shotguns again and paying the price for hitting explodey stuffs and getting shot in return. Who knows, maybe it was also a legitimate thanks, although seeing that shortly after somebody respawns is generally not a legit thanks. But also we don't have voice chat anymore, so for whatever reason, so who knows. Absolutely insane. We nerfed the fortune so much though. Right, so for people who aren't aware, it seems fairly reasonable, I suppose, especially in the long run side of things. The fortunes got reworked, or rather their upgrades got reworked alongside all the other ones that got reworked at the same time because devs don't know how to leave well enough alone. And they added a plus rate of fire upgrade to them in place of some other upgrade which was whatever, probably obviously a lot less useful. And as a result they're like, oh, but you know what, it'd be way too overpowered if they kept their current rate of fire and got a rate of fire upgrade. So they nerfed the rate of fire. So I don't know if it was the same 25% but if so, that means that it was a 25% DPS reduction to all fortunes that were unupgraded, and at best, you'd have to spend 2 to 3 times the cost per fortune to upgrade them to just get them back to the way they were. So I don't know what the fuck was up with that. And I mean, they got backlash for it, but I mean, they get backlash for literally everything they do, and that hasn't stopped them for the most part. It certainly doesn't stop people from playing them or using them or anything, but I wasn't, like I said, fortunes are interesting, but like, with that severe of a difference, and then of course they were available on the mini BP exchange workbench immediately thereafter for the next two quote-unquote makeup for it. But yeah, kind of hard to want to use them, especially with that consideration. So maybe it's just better that I lay off on them for the time being until such time as they become a little bit more viable. I want to say unique, but I mean, like, they are unique, they're just miserable to handle currently. Their uniqueness is in how much they suck for a legendary weapon. Well, against bots specifically, but pretty much every reload-based weapon suffers as a result of that. No, I really don't know what's up with the Xbox app. It seems to be running fine frame-wise, and it's not necessarily decreasing the resolution overall, but in certain spots it very much is. And those spots also tend to be the static ones, so I don't understand. Software is hard, guys, so we're not allowed to complain about it at all. That's how she works. What that dude's doing. Just decided to whip a donut and then drive off. I guess it's trying to follow the OBJ. Not doing a very good job of it, my guy. Oh, thank you, Retro Brick. I also just remembered I haven't done the weeklies for Warframe yet. To be fair, I haven't done any of the dailies this week, but I also haven't done any of the weeklies this week. I have to look into that tomorrow. Well, I mean, I guess if I do it at all, it's either tomorrow or tonight, which is, you know, the same thing right now. But, don't think it'll be before I go to bed thing. In any case. Wise answer would be just get my Crossout dailies done. It should be less than half an hour after this, since this is my last bit of fuel. So I just gotta do the patrol and the remaining Crossout day stuff. And then go to bed, and then wake up, do stuff, do the Warframe stuff before reset. Oh, look at that, I was making progress on that anyway. Look at me go. Multitasking without even realizing it. Nice. Except I still gotta do the armored aircraft, so it doesn't matter. Well, so this does not spark joy. This looks like nobody took my suggestions in the stream very seriously to go find that Leviathan, but yeah, well, I mean, I guess, like, I did also technically update these a little bit, but it's mostly, like, it was, like, shifting everything by, like, 1 pip, and figuring out the pain and suffering that is getting the contact modules in good places, so I don't think there's really anything terribly exciting to talk about there. This is pretty much the same thing as from the event. I just added a little bit more armor because I got the fused Catalina from the, workbench for this event, so I got a little bit more mass. And still got a shit ton of builds to update. And parts to get in order to update aforementioned builds. Like, for instance, for this, the entire premise of this is like, let's give our weapons dummy amounts of durability, which would be to run the machinist with 4 vindicators. But vindicators are really expensive. Well, sorry, they're not, like, on a per weapon basis, they're, like, decent. Like, they've been down to 3,000 before. But, like, you need 4 of them. So that gets kind of pricey. And then also they're just, not good. Mostly helped along by the fact that they're just so limited in crafting. But yeah, well, that's fuel. Theoretically, I could stream doing the patrols in the Crossout day, but I don't know that there's really a whole lot more to glean from that. And the Xbox app is still constantly dying, so I think maybe just end it here for today. At least stream-wise. One of my shorter streams, but hey, I got 0 drop frames, so whatever the issue is with Xbox app or the internet. Well, it can't really be with the internet, can it? I'm just going to scapegoat the Xbox app because I really, really dislike how they took away the console companion for this. Interesting. That immediately got everything fuzzy.